I stared at the bank statement on my laptop screen, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. $47,000. Gone. Just like that, transferred to an account I didn't recognize, with a memo line that read, Mom's Medical Fund. I had to read it 3 times before my brain could process what I was seeing. That's when I knew everything was about to fall apart. But let me back up. 6 months earlier, everything felt perfect, or at least, that's what I told myself. My name is Michael. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 14 years building a life with my wife, Jennifer. We met in college at Ohio State, got married at 24, and by 30 we'd managed to buy a house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. It was a modest 3-bedroom with a detached garage, a mortgage we could actually afford, and a neighbor on one side who kept to himself and a young family on the other. The American dream, right? That's what it felt like. Jennifer is, a physical therapist at a local clinic. She made decent money, had regular hours, and genuinely loved her work. She'd come home most days with stories about patients she'd helped, the progress they were making. I worked in IT management for a mid-sized logistics company, pulling in around $95,000 a year with decent benefits. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had date nights, took a vacation to Florida every other year, and we'd started talking seriously about kids. Our marriage wasn't fireworks and passion anymore. That had mellowed into something quieter and steadier. We'd developed rhythms. Friday nights meant we'd pick up Thai food from the place on High Street and watch Netflix. Saturday mornings, Jennifer would go to the gym while I handled yard work or groceries. Sunday dinners, we'd call our parents. It was predictable, but I liked it that way. Predictable meant safe. Jennifer's mother, Carol, lived about 40 minutes away in an assisted living facility in Delaware. Carol was 68, still pretty active for her age, but she'd had a stroke 4 years back that left her with some mobility issues. Jennifer visited her every other Sunday without fail. I'd go along maybe once a month. Carol was pleasant enough, a retired nurse with strong opinions about everything from politics to the proper way to load a dishwasher. She had this way of making you feel like you weren't quite meeting expectations, even when you were trying your best. Everything started shifting around 6 months ago, though I didn't see it coming. Jennifer came home one Tuesday evening in late March, and I could tell immediately something was off. She had that look, the one where her jaw was tight, and she was moving around the kitchen with more force than necessary. "Hey, what's wrong?" I asked, looking up from my laptop where I'd been catching up on emails. "Nothing's wrong," she said, but she was practically slamming cabinets as she pulled out ingredients for dinner. "It's just, my mom called. She's been having some pain in her hip. The doctor thinks she might need surgery." "Okay," I said carefully. "Is it serious?" "They're not sure yet. She needs more tests. But Michael, if she does need surgery, the facility is saying that Medicare won't cover everything. There could be significant out-of-pocket costs." I nodded, already running the numbers in my head. "How much are we talking?" "Maybe 15, 20,000? We don't know yet." I felt a little flutter of anxiety, but nothing catastrophic. We had savings. Not huge savings, but enough. "Well, we can help if it comes to that. Don't worry." Jennifer stopped chopping and looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that I didn't recognize. Guilt, maybe? Or fear? "Thank you," she said quietly. "I was hoping you'd say that." That should have been my first warning sign. Jennifer doesn't usually ask for reassurance. She's the strong one, the one who handles problems. Seeing her like that made me uneasy, even though I tried to push it aside. Over the next few weeks, Carol's health became a regular dinner table conversation. The tests came back inconclusive. The doctor wanted to do an MRI. There might be arthritis, or it could be something else. Every time Jennifer got off the phone with her mother, she seemed more stressed, more distant. By mid-April, I noticed Jennifer was putting in extra hours at the clinic. She'd mentioned picking up a few additional patient slots to build up savings for emergencies. I thought it was sweet, actually, her taking initiative to help her mom. I didn't question it. I should have. Around the same time, Jennifer started asking me more detailed questions about our finances. What was our current savings balance? How much credit card debt did we have? Had I checked our credit score lately? I answered her questions, showing her the accounts, explaining that we had about $38,000 in our emergency fund and the house was paid down to around $140,000. Our credit score was solid, 728. We were in good shape. "What about your 401k?" she asked one night, scrolling through our bank portal on her phone. "Why? You thinking about early retirement?" I joked. She didn't laugh. "Just curious about our total net worth." It was an odd question, but I answered it anyway. My 401k had grown to around $215,000 at that point. I'd been contributing consistently since I started at the company. Jennifer nodded, saying nothing, and I returned my attention to the game on TV. In May, her mom's situation seemed to stabilize. The doctor decided to hold off on surgery and try physical therapy first. Jennifer seemed relieved, and for a couple of weeks life went back to something resembling normal. We had dinner with friends, we went to a movie, things felt lighter. But then something strange happened. Jennifer started being secretive about her phone. She'd take calls in the other room. When I'd come in, she'd quickly end the conversation. One afternoon, I saw her on a video call, just a glimpse as I walked past the bedroom, and she looked upset. Her eyes were red. "Everything okay?" I asked, knocking on the door. "Fine," she said immediately, closing the laptop screen. "Just a difficult patient situation. Nothing for you to worry about." I believed her. Or I wanted to believe her. It's easier not to ask hard questions when you're happy. June came, and we talked about taking our annual vacation. Jennifer suggested we skip it this year, save the money instead. "You know, just in case my mom does need that surgery," she explained. I agreed without argument, thinking I was being supportive. Then came July. I was working from home that Thursday, attending back-to-back video calls. Around 2 in the afternoon, I got a notification on my phone, a banking alert. A transfer of $2,000 had been made from our joint savings account. That wasn't unusual in itself. Jennifer sometimes made transfers for household expenses. But something made me click through to look at the history. The transfers had been happening for months, small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there. But over the last 6 weeks, they'd gotten bigger. 3,500, 4,000, 2,500, all going to the same account at a different bank, an account that didn't have Jennifer's name on it in the transfer memo. My heart started pounding. I pulled up the full statement and did the math. Since late April, almost $47,000 had moved from our account, nearly all of our emergency fund. Gone. I stared at those numbers for what felt like an hour, trying to make sense of them. Medical bills? But Jennifer had said insurance would cover most of it. And even if it didn't, why would the transfers go to an account that wasn't her mom's name? Why wouldn't Jennifer have told me? My hands felt cold. I closed the laptop and just sat there, listening to the sound of the air conditioning unit humming outside. I was supposed to be on a call with my team at 2:30. I didn't care anymore. When Jennifer came home that evening around 6, I was sitting on the couch in the dark living room, waiting for her. My chest felt tight. "Michael?" She flipped on the light, and I saw her face shift when she saw my expression. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "We need to talk about our savings account," I said quietly. Her face went completely white. Jennifer's face went completely white. "What do you mean?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "I mean $47,000, I said, my voice steady even though everything inside me was shaking. "Gone from our savings account, since April, to an account I don't recognize. Want to tell me what's going on?" She stood there in the doorway, still holding her work bag, and I watched the color drain from her face. Her lips opened and closed like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. "Michael, I can explain." "Then explain," I said, "because right now I'm looking at months of transfers. Small amounts at first, then bigger. Thousands of dollars, Jennifer. Our emergency fund. The money we were supposed to use if one of us lost a job, or if there was an actual crisis." "It is a crisis," she said quietly. "My mom." "Your mom's name isn't on any of these transfers," I interrupted, pulling up the bank statement on my phone and showing it to her. "Look at it. Unnamed account. No explanation. Nothing." Jennifer set down her bag slowly and sank onto the arm of the couch. When she looked up at me, her eyes were red and wet. "We need to talk about my mom," she said, "but not like this, not angry. Please, Michael, can we just sit down?" Something in her voice made me pause. This wasn't the sound of someone caught in a lie. This was the sound of someone who'd been carrying something unbearably heavy. I sat down across from her in the armchair, and she took a shaky breath. "My mom's situation is worse than I told you," Jennifer began. "Much worse. When I went to visit her in March, she pulled me aside and told me something. She said she's been having memory problems, forgetting things, losing track of days." I felt my anger shift into something else, concern. "The hip pain was real, but it wasn't the main issue," Jennifer continued, wiping her eyes. "She was scared. She thought maybe she was developing Alzheimer's or early dementia. She asked me not to tell you because she didn't want to worry you until she knew more." "Okay," I said slowly, "but that still doesn't explain the money transfers." "There's a man," Jennifer said. "His name is Richard. He's been visiting my mom at the facility. At first, the staff thought he was just a friend, but then Mom started talking about him more and more, talking about how kind he was, how he listened to her, how he helped her with things." A knot formed in my stomach. "Richard told her he had a business opportunity, something about investing in a real estate development. He said it was a limited-time offer, that he needed capital from people he trusted, and that it would double her money in a year." "No," I whispered. "Yes," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "And Michael, I think he's been manipulating her. I think he's taken advantage of the fact that she's scared and alone and confused about her own mind. I confronted him about 2 months ago when I realized what was happening. He denied everything, told me I was being paranoid and overprotective. But by then, he'd already convinced my mom to let him manage some of her savings." "How much?" I asked. "About $30,000 of her own money. But then she ran out of liquid savings, and she asked if she could borrow from us, to keep the investment going. She was terrified that if she didn't send more money, Richard would think she wasn't serious and the whole deal would fall through." I stood up and walked to the window, unable to look at her. My mind was racing, trying to process this. "And you gave her the money? Our money?" "I didn't know what else to do." Jennifer's voice rose, desperate. "My mother is being scammed, Michael. She's losing her mind, and some predator is taking advantage of that. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I thought if I gave her the money, bought her some time, I could figure out how to stop him. I was trying to protect her. By emptying our savings without telling me? Because I knew you'd try to handle it logically," she said. "You'd call a lawyer. You'd want to involve the authorities. And by then, Richard would disappear with everything. I thought if I could just get her to realize what was happening on her own." "That's not your decision to make alone," I shouted. "We're married, Jennifer. We're partners. And you decided unilaterally to drain almost $50,000 from our account. Do you understand what you've done? We have a mortgage."
"I know what we have," she screamed back, standing up now.
"I know exactly what we have, because I'm the one who's been lying awake at night, terrified, trying to figure out how to fix this. Do you think I wanted to do this? Do you think I wanted to become the person who lies to her husband?" We stood there, both breathing hard, the space between us feeling like a chasm. "I need to see the bank records," I said finally. "All of them. I need to know exactly where every dollar went." Jennifer nodded and pulled out her phone. As we went through the transfers together, the full picture emerged. She'd been moving money in small increments to avoid triggering fraud alerts. The account the money was going to was registered to something called Midwest Development Partners LLC. Jennifer had actually done some digging. She showed me notes she'd kept, screenshots of emails between her mother and Richard, messages where he kept pushing for more money, always with some new crisis or opportunity. "I was planning to go to the police," Jennifer said quietly. "I just needed a little more time to gather evidence, and I wanted to get my mom to admit what was happening first, because I was afraid Richard would just deny everything and disappear." "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "Why not trust me to help you figure this out?" "Because I was ashamed," she said, and the rawness in her voice broke something in me. "I was ashamed that my mother was being victimized and I couldn't stop it. I was ashamed that I was lying to you, and I was terrified that once you found out, you'd be so angry that you wouldn't want to help me anymore, that you'd leave." I sat back down, exhausted. "I need time," I said. "I need to think about this." "I understand," Jennifer whispered. That night, I slept in the guest bedroom. I couldn't look at her, couldn't be close to her, even though intellectually I understood that she'd been trying to protect her mother. The betrayal of being lied to, of having decisions made about our money without my consent, that didn't just disappear because her intentions had been good. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Sandra, and she came highly recommended by a colleague. We met in her office in downtown Columbus, and I laid out the situation. Sandra listened carefully, asking detailed questions about the transfers, the timeline, Jennifer's access to the accounts. "Here's what concerns me," Sandra said, leaning back in her chair. "If these transfers were made from a joint account without the knowledge or consent of the other account holder, that's potentially a serious issue. Even if she's your wife, unilateral financial decisions of this magnitude can constitute fraud, depending on the circumstances." "I don't want to press charges against my wife," I said immediately. "I understand, but we need to understand your options," Sandra continued. "More importantly, we need to address this scam targeting your mother-in-law. If someone is actively defrauding her, that's a matter for law enforcement. Have you contacted the police?" "No. I only found out about this yesterday." Sandra nodded. "I'd recommend filing a report with both the local police and the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Advance fee fraud like this is federal. Do you have documentation of the communications between your mother-in-law and this Richard character?" "My wife has screenshots and emails," I said. "Good. Gather everything. And I'd strongly suggest you freeze your joint accounts immediately, at least the liquid ones. You need to protect yourself financially while you sort this out." I felt sick. Protect myself from my wife. That's what she was saying, whether she said it explicitly or not. Over the next week, I did what Sandra suggested. I contacted the Columbus Police Department and filed a report about Carol's situation. I gathered all the documentation Jennifer had collected and turned it over to the detective assigned to the case. I froze our joint savings account and moved what remained into a separate account in my name only. Jennifer didn't fight me on any of it. She seemed almost relieved, actually, like the secret being out was the worst part and everything else was just logistics. But the damage to our marriage was profound. We barely spoke for 2 weeks. We moved through the house like ghosts, careful not to collide. I stopped wearing my wedding ring. Jennifer noticed but didn't comment. I threw myself into work, volunteering for extra projects, staying late, anything to not be home. Then, on a Tuesday evening, Jennifer came into the office where I was pretending to work on my laptop. "The police arrested Richard," she said. "He's been charged with elder fraud. They found evidence that he'd been running the same scheme on 6 other people at various assisted living facilities in the state." I looked up at her. "How's your mom?" "Devastated," Jennifer said, "but relieved, I think. The detective said there's a good chance they'll recover some of the money. It's not all of it, but it's something." I nodded, not sure what to say. "I'm going to move back in with her for a while," Jennifer continued, "just to help her get back on her feet, to help her understand that this wasn't her fault. She's blaming herself, and I need to be there." "Okay," I said. "And I'm going to see a therapist," she added, "because I need to understand why I thought lying was better than trusting you, why I decided I could handle this alone." "That's good," I said. She stood there for another moment, and I could see her struggling with whether to say more. Finally, she turned and left. The separation lasted 4 months. Jennifer moved into Carol's apartment, and I stayed in the house. We communicated through text and email, slowly working through the logistics of our lives, bills, property, the hard conversation about whether we wanted to try to salvage the marriage. In September, Jennifer asked if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no, but something made me agree. We sat across from each other at a cafe near her work, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I've been in therapy twice a week since June," Jennifer finally said, "and I've learned a lot about myself, about my tendency to try to solve problems alone, about why I feel like I have to be perfect and in control. "Jennifer," I started. "Let me finish," she said gently. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust, and I know that trust doesn't just come back because I say I'm sorry. But I want you to know that I understand the gravity of what I did, and I'm genuinely trying to become someone who doesn't make those kinds of decisions in secret. I've been thinking about it too," I said, "about the fact that you were carrying all of this alone. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't notice that something was wrong. Maybe if I had been a better partner, a more present partner, you wouldn't have felt like you had to handle it yourself." "That's not fair to yourself," Jennifer said. "This is on me, not on you." "It's on both of us," I said. "Our marriage was already a little distant. We were going through the motions. I was comfortable, and comfort made me lazy. I didn't ask hard questions. I didn't really listen when you said things were fine." We talked for 2 hours that afternoon, not fixing anything, but at least being honest about what had broken and why. Over the next few months, we started couples therapy. It was difficult and sometimes painful, but it was real. We talked about why we drifted, about how we could rebuild trust, about what we both needed to feel safe and connected again. In December, Jennifer moved back home. We didn't jump back into our old routine. Instead, we built something new, something more intentional. We had a standing weekly date night where we actually talked, not just sat in the same room. We created a financial transparency agreement where both of us had full visibility into all accounts and discussed any transfer over $500 together. And I learned to ask harder questions. When Jennifer seemed stressed, I didn't just accept "I'm fine." I pushed gently, invited her to share, made it safe for her to be vulnerable. By the following spring, we were in a better place. Not perfect, we'd been through too much for perfect, but real, grounded. Carol recovered most of her stolen money, and Richard is currently serving a 5-year sentence. Jennifer's mother has been diagnosed with mild cognitive decline, but it's manageable with proper care and support. Jennifer visits her 3 times a week now, and I often go along. The hardest part wasn't the money or even the deception. It was learning that the person I'd married was capable of lying to me, and learning that I was capable of not noticing. It forced us both to confront uncomfortable truths about our marriage and ourselves. A shared budget means we both contribute. For a long time, Jennifer was contributing in ways I couldn't see, carrying burdens alone, making sacrifices in secret, trying to fix problems without asking for help. That's not contribution, that's martyrdom, and it nearly destroyed us. Now, when she contributes, I see it, and when I contribute, she sees it. And we talk about what we're each bringing to the table, not just in terms of money, but in terms of effort, support, and presence. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't checked that bank statement. Maybe we would have kept drifting until we hit something worse. Maybe the lie would have metastasized into something we couldn't come back from. Instead, it became the thing that forced us to actually build a marriage rather than just maintain one. The truth, as painful as it was, turned out to be the thing that saved us.